The fourth and final step results in the understanding that the will, knowledge, and audacity have turned the work into child's play. And silence about the work imposes itself. Because silence is all too obvious. A differentiated language is already spoken. Words, actions, and thoughts are in different languages. Information will come in the silence of generous minds. There are questions to be answered, and information to be relayed to others, that need to be put in accessible language. Accessible language is sorely lacking, and does not grasp the clarity of the subject. The information will be made available, in the same way it arrived to the now no longer a walker. In silence lies, also and mainly, invisibility and unknowability. The sage hides within the ordinary, unrecognized as a sage. And by acting as the most common, they transfer knowledge in the ordinary, and in silence. It is a knowledge that knows, one is not what one appears to be, and no longer questions the gods, that is, the powers attributed to the human imagination, the foundation of beliefs and religions. Throughout time, powers will be attributed to imagined beings and imaginary beings. There are various structures in different civilizations. The beliefs of each being, based on the stories told, are already known to be unique, and planted in each individual. There exist, from a single god, to an incalculable number of gods, constructed based on hasty observations, and equally hasty conclusions, about the formation of things. For each thing, a greater power is given, that creates, sustains, and destroys, always in accordance with principles, virtues, values, and merits. The gods are human creations, for all types of behavioral guidance. Exchanges between beings, of any kind, rely on the existence of godly figures. And what appears as defeat or victory, generates feelings of gratitude, guilt, and requests for forgiveness to the gods. The man in the mountain, when his physical body was afflicted with a terminal illness, faced all sorts of requests from his followers, to use his strength in the healing process of his body. He knew that few would understand the movement of a complicit nature, which placed misunderstood and selfish love in jeopardy. He also understood the limitations in comprehending the process, and even the words to explain it. He knew that in this interplay of forces, fragile foundations would crumble. And a large number of those who called themselves followers, would plunge into doubt, uncertainty, sadness, and ultimately, selfishness, also due to the feeling of abandonment and loss. The master, in the eyes of the followers, who never claimed such a title, would no longer be present. Nothing wrong, and nothing right. But how often is gold invisible, even when standing upon it? The coexistence of adults and children is allowed, but those to whom flesh is given are few. This clarifies many stories that are or are not in books. The mountain gains a saint and tourists, and both obscure the presence of continuous learning, whose availability ignites the fire of attentive and eager wanderers. The cult renews itself as fundamental. And, just like the foolish creation of the mountain saint, many others are created everywhere. Images, and anything that arouses devotion, are passed on and commercialized. Foundations are built or reinforced, to superimpose themselves upon the path of the self, whose discovery was the intent of the mountain man's teaching, rather than being led or elevated to the role of a saint. Invisibility persists, but now, there is the mask of a tongue and names, that preserve the permanence of a body, never deemed relevant by the mountain man, respectfully placed where it seems fitting. Yet another god was constructed, even though the mountain man advised that to find a god, one should not create it, but rather distance oneself from the created gods. New names received to justify rebirths, that are not truly rebirths, but rather new masks, should never be given importance. Yet many institutions feed on this, and survive through it. The man in the mountain, long ago, no longer had a name. And how many names he received. For him, returning as light, was a natural occurrence, and the only thing that mattered. The silent and wise gaze, and words measured always with wisdom. No devotions, only intimate connections. Touches, from essence to essence.